I don't know about you all, and I don't know if there are any words that go with that song, but to me I kept hearing, spring will come, winter will end. Welcome everyone to Unity of Bloomington. We welcome everyone here. It's so great to see the chapel continue, the sanctuary continue to fill. And we use a saying that helps remind us who we are at the core of our community and also introduce ourselves to new people. So please join me in speaking our identity affirmation. Together, we are a heart-centered community seeking spiritual awakening and transformation by deepening our connections with God, self, and others. Thank you. And if it's available to you, please stand and join us in our welcoming song.
There's just one presence, there's just one light, shining in the world like a beacon in the night. There's just one power we all can share, one great power everywhere. ocean and the skies up above. One great spirit waiting in prayer. One great power everywhere. There's just one purpose. There's just one spark, burning in our souls like a candle in the dark. There's just one chorus we all can sing. One great power, let it ring. One great power, one great love, big as the ocean and the skies up above. One great spirit waiting in prayer. There's one great power everywhere. One great power, one great love, big as the ocean and the skies up above. One great spirit waiting in prayer. There's one great power everywhere. One great power everywhere.
Woo! Thank you, everyone. Please have a seat. Every Sunday, we speak a transition affirmation. If you can't tell by now, we love our affirmations. But we are a community that's in transition, and I am honored to be part of the search committee that is doing a lot of the boots on the ground work to identify our next right minister. Our work is beginning to accelerate, and so I'm happy as a member of this committee to give you an update. We'll also give an update at the annual meeting, and we plan to give an update regularly from the lectern in the newsletter, and also just kind of casually in the meet and greet, the snacky time that we have afterwards, because we're needing more and more of your input and your involvement in this process. And I just kind of want to back up and level set and let everyone know where we've come from and the actions that have been taken so far on this effort. So you all know that at the end of 2022, both of our minister co-coordinators resigned, and we began a period of discernment that to determine what kind of leadership we wanted. We had co-ministers. It's a really creative way of nurturing and uniting our community, but we were at a crossroads. We had an opportunity to identify, okay, going forward, what it is that we want. What have we learned from these experiences that brought us to this now moment? So we took a bunch of surveys, we had a bunch of workshops, we had many, many discussions, and the community determined that we want a single full-time minister. In order to leverage the assistance of the mothership, as we call it, Unity Worldwide Ministries, we needed to update our bylaws and submit an application to them so that they could help us promote. So the board updated the bylaws in the spring of last year, and then the search committee, which consists of Tana McElhinney, Phyllis Wycliffe, myself, Mary Ellen May, and Leanne Kelly. We met in May, and we submitted those materials to Unity Worldwide in June. By October, we hadn't received any applicants or any candidates. So Board President Joanie started working with Michael and Mary Ellen May to create the amazing video that was shown here and was part of some promotional materials that we submitted to the Interior Mythos emailing list. Shortly after releasing the video in January, we started getting so much wonderful, loving support from people saying, I'm not a candidate for the position, but I support you in your efforts and I'm holding you in the light. All of that makes a difference, But in addition to that support, we received 4 letters of intent and 4 resumes that the search committee is moving forward with. The application is still open at Unity Worldwide, but we still haven't received any candidates from that pathway yet. So, 4 candidates. That's pretty great. The search committee reached out to these candidates, and recently we met with 2 of them. Of the 4, 3 of them responded that they would like to move forward in the process. So we've met with 2 of them. They seem great, spoiler alert. We're looking forward to checking their references next, and we're meeting with 1 of them next week as well. So our next step as the search committee is to check the references for the candidates we think might be a good fit. And if they pass through the reference check, then we will have the formal interview, which the community will be invited to participate in. And that leads me to a couple of asks that I have for you. So the first ask is, we want to know what you think is important for us to ask the references and the candidates themselves to evaluate whether they're a good fit for our community. We have a form that's been created that'll go out through the newsletter. There'll be a couple of rounds that you see this. We'll also have some QR codes in the sanctuary that you can just scan the QR code and complete the form. Or you can just talk with Tana or Leanne or myself or Phyllis or Mary Ellen. If you have any thoughts about a fun activity once we bring these folks to town, and you think that it would be a great way to just get to know who they are as a person behind the resume, then there's a place for that in the form. And also, you can reach out to the search committee members. And then finally, I'd like to plant a seed for you to consider how you would like to be involved in once we bring these folks to town. For example, maybe you'd like to create a welcome basket. Maybe you'd like to give them a bicycle tour of Bloomington. Maybe there's some other way that you would like to introduce them more deeply to our larger community and our community as well. So those are the actions that we are taking in the physical realm. Let's now turn to preparing ourselves energetically for the inevitable arrival of our new minister. So please join me in speaking our transition affirmation aloud. Together? Unity of Bloomington is generating an abundant future in expansive alignment with Spirit. We lean deeply into truth principles, live our faith, and trust the process. Our greatest desire is to be abundant and attract those who value spiritual growth, including our next right minister.
We've us together, we've us together in unity and love. We've us together, we've us together, together in love. We are many textures, we are many colors, each one different from the other, but we are entwined with one another in one great tapestry. We
In his poem, A Great Wagon, the 13th century Persian mystic Rumi explored three main themes: the realization of a spiritual realm, the exploration of non-judgment, and the experience of oneness. Please relax in your chair and tune your modern mystic soul to this second verse. See what might be alive for you today in these words. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
big thanks to Joanie for selecting that song and to all the work that Phyllis put into transposing it, giving us the sheet music, the MP3s, and look how beautifully it turned out. It is my honor to introduce Joanie and John Spain today. They really need no introduction within Unity of Bloomington. Joanie serves as our board president, and John has been a guest speaker on several occasions. But for those of you who are meeting them for the first time today, Joanie and John came to Bloomington 8 years ago when Joanie accepted a job offer to join the staff of the Jacobs School of Music as a career advisor. John, being retired, naturally came along. Thankfully came along. They both would describe themselves as spiritual seekers, although they follow different paths. Joanie found new thought through the teachings of Ernest Holmes, a contemporary of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who founded Unity. John grew up a Southern Baptist and was ordained by the American Baptist Churches USA following his 1999 graduation from the United Theological Seminary of Dayton, Ohio. Their presentation today explores how they have come to understand the life of the Spirit as it has called them through these two traditions. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and I think that our talk is done after that song. That's the whole thing right there. Some of you know that I'm in the Spiritual Direction program through Unity Worldwide Ministries, and one of the textbooks in this program is Faith Styles, Ways People Believe by John Mabry. In it, the author examines modes of believing as a way of helping spiritual directors better understand how to accompany others on their journey. He outlines 3 primary faith styles: traditional believer, ethical humanist, and spiritual eclectic, and 3 secondary systems: liberal believer, religious agnostic, and Jack believer. John and I are in a mixed marriage.
In the terms of Mabry's faith style, Joanie is a spiritual eclectic. He summarizes the attributes of a spiritual eclectic as responses to these questions. How is the divine imaged? As a spiritual force animating all of nature. What is the nature of one's relationship with the divine? Pantheistic. There is no distinction between creation and the divine. How does one construct meaning in the world? By protecting the biosphere and all creatures and promoting greater consciousness. What are the accepted sources of spiritual wisdom? Spiritual wisdom of every tradition, in one's own experience, and in the body. How is spiritual growth assessed? The degree to which one can see through the illusion of separateness and realize one's unity with all being.
Yep.
The practices that are honored: prayer and meditation, ritual, sacred reading, art, exercise, being in nature, and activism. The advantage of the spiritual eclectic: diversity and spiritual generosity. The disadvantages: gullibility and lack of groundedness.
John has moved from the childhood of a traditional believer into liberal belief. Both are still present and very much alive for him. And here is his cosmology. How is the divine imaged? As the great I am, eternal and unchanging. What is the nature of one's relationship with the divine? Idiosyncratic, ever growing in understanding as a child grows in understanding. How does one construct meaning in the world? In justice for the oppressed, in mercy for the wicked, and in walking humbly. What are the accepted sources of spiritual wisdom? Scripture, tradition, reason, and experience. How is spiritual growth assessed? the degree to which one is able to authentically be oneself. What are the practices honored? Prayer and contemplative practices, studying scripture, corporate worship, and being in nature. Advantages, spiritual and personal generosity. Disadvantages, spiritual arrogance, and difficulty in articulating the path.
Joanie, what was your path to becoming a spiritual eclectic?
It's in my DNA, I think. My maternal grandparents were spiritualists, and my grandfather belonged to the Theosophical Society. Both of those are early 20th century movements. Spiritualism focuses on the afterlife and believes and promotes direct communication with those across the veil. Theosophy is an intellectual movement that explores the junction of theology and philosophy. My family attended the Methodist Church on Sunday morning and the Spiritualist Church on Sunday night. At the age of 12, I went to catechism classes to join the Methodist Church, and I came home one night and told my parents that I didn't want to join. And my dad asked me why, and I said, I don't believe what they're saying. And he said, well, what don't you believe? And I told him whatever it was at that time. And he said, okay, what do you believe? And I told him what a 12-year-old believes. And he said, okay, you don't have to join the church. And you can visit other churches with your friends. Or if you find a church you want to go to, just tell me and I'll take you. So at the age of 12, the responsibility for my spiritual journey was given to me. And over the years, I have come to realize what a tremendous gift that is. Nothing was imposed upon me. I was free to explore, and I did explore. At about age 30, I passed a church marquee in downtown Dayton, and I thought to myself, now that's a sermon I could get behind. And I looked, and it was the First Church of Religious Science. And religious science is now known as Centers for Spiritual Living, but it's a contemporary movement to unity and a parallel movement to unity. I waited a couple weeks and I visited the church. I sat in the back in case there were a bunch of weirdos and I had to make a quick exit. And I sat there completely stunned. I heard everything I had ever expected to hear in a church and never had. I found my people, I found my home, and that was the first church I ever joined. So, John, tell us about your journey as a liberal, traditional believer.
Well, when your father is a professor at a Baptist university and wrote about Baptist history, going to a Baptist church wasn't a choice. It was what we did. My earliest memories are going to church, falling asleep during the sermons. But as I got older, I began to tune in to what was going on around me. And I enjoyed the preachers. I enjoyed hearing their passion expressed and their rhetorical style and their flourishes. I particularly enjoyed the music. And the music of the church that I grew up in still speaks to me today, even when it proclaims a theology I no longer embrace. I could never quite get behind Jesus saves, or Jesus died for your sins, or go out and conquer the world in the name of Christ. That just didn't seem consistent with a loving God. When I was in high school, I went to a church camp at Gloria, New Mexico, 3 consecutive summers. And the second summer, I noticed that the program was exactly the same. The testimonies of people's life of faith were exactly the same. And it was as if everyone was reading from a script. My best friend Justin was there this second summer as well. He responded to that experience by never going to church again. After the third summer, I decided I'm going to dig into this tradition until I find something that speaks to me. My freshman year in college, I visited a Baptist church where, to use Joanie's words, I heard everything I ever expected to hear in church but never had.
So, what was the difference between the church you visited in college and the Baptist churches of your childhood?
Well, in the Baptist churches of my childhood, a very strict, prescribed set of beliefs and understandings was wrapped in a pretty thick emotional robe and offered to me whole, without question. What I heard at the Lakeshore Baptist Church in Waco was it's okay to bring your intellect to church. It's okay to have a mind, an inquisitive mind. It's okay to explore the scriptures critically and with the way scholars did. And the challenge is to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Today, I remain grounded in my Baptist heritage. Joanie, how did your early experiences in a traditional church inform your becoming a spiritual eclectic?
When I was 9 or 10, I had a very real and deep experience of having a sudden knowing that I was only here to serve God. And that was so confusing to me because I wasn't Catholic. And the only vision of a woman who served God was a nun. And so I thought, well, sorry, I guess I can't. And then I never really saw myself in the Methodist Church either. I didn't see myself in the scripture. Someone who looked like me was responsible for the fall of all mankind. Like, she ate an apple and we're all doomed. And the women in the Bible were prostitutes or adulterers or otherwise unclean in so many ways. And I just couldn't see myself there. But through the writings of Eric Butterworth first, he was my first entree to New Thought, and through Eric Butterworth and Ernest Holmes and Marianne Williamson and Louise Hay and others, their writings spoke to me about me. I could see myself in spiritual terms for the first time. And the irony is that those writings and my relationship with John and our conversations have drawn me closer to the traditional scriptures. They're much more meaningful to me now than they ever were before. So we've talked about faith styles, but maybe we'll talk a little bit about belief. John, what do you believe about belief?
Well, I think it's probably the second most powerful force in the universe. Our beliefs tend to shape how we define ourselves, how we understand our relationship to the world and others around us. They provide us the filters with which we interact with the world, and they're even more powerful than facts or data or tradition. I understand that we're all in a continuous process of observing the world and interacting with it, and creating an explanation for ourselves about who we are in the world, and if God is part of that story, the nature of God. Our parents give us the first draft of this narrative, and then sometime around the age of 4 to 6, we start writing that narrative for ourselves. Also, our received religious tradition, or our chosen tradition, writes a narrative infrastructure, a meta-narrative, if you will, within which we live and move and have our being. So, Joanie, tell us about an experience that has shaped your beliefs.
Shortly after my son Will died in 2019, I decided to embrace nihilism. I made a conscious choice that Existence is a random biological process. What is confined to what I can see, hear, and touch, and I decided that life is essentially empty and meaningless. My adventures in nihilism lasted less than 48 hours. I couldn't live inside my own head with the hopelessness of nihilism. But in that process, I had a realization. Truth with a capital T has absolutely nothing to do with what I believe. I have no way of knowing whether my beliefs are true or not. I can't explain God any way that I could explain God or explain existence or is too small. I can't understand the mystery with my own human experience. So at this point, I actually took kind of a giant step toward ethical humanism, and I decided to embrace beliefs that lead to more compassion, more peace, joy, harmony, connection, service, and unity. And it was at that point that I walked back through those doors and returned to my New Thought home. This is the language and the cosmology that helps me make sense of the world around me. So now I would like you to tell these good folks how being in a relationship with a spiritual eclectic has shaped your beliefs.
Well, for one thing, Joanie has helped me understand more fully that the ways in which men and women live side by side in separate realities. This growing awareness has informed my reading of Scripture. For example, there are very few stories, though there are some, of powerful women, and there are very few metaphors that describe the divine feminine in the Bible. I began to realize that perhaps men and women have fundamentally different spiritual needs. For us men, our challenge is to lay down our need to dominate and control by submitting to a higher authority and a higher calling. Women, on the other hand, need to hear a message of empowerment and exaltation. The traces of the divine feminine need to be explored and recovered and held up if Christianity is to speak as powerfully and directly to women as it does to men. If it fails to do that, I think traditional Christianity has a limited future. Joanie, what would it be like for you to be married to a spiritual eclectic?
Oh. Well, my first thought would be that it would be kind of obnoxious. I think it would be a battle of the singing bowls. Seriously, though, I come from a tradition where, a generation really, of women who molded themselves to their husbands' expectations and demands. My mother and two older sisters never truly found their own voice in many aspects of their lives. If I were married to a spiritual eclectic, I may have followed that same lead, just let my partner take the lead in matters of spiritual exploration. I value exploring beliefs in the context of diversity of thought, and I know that growth happens by contrast and in relationship and in contrast. So the reality is that being married to someone who's spiritually compatible, but outside my chosen spiritual expression, has allowed me, or maybe it's forced me, to define and articulate my beliefs for myself. You have never tried to change or influence that very personal process for me, and I'm very grateful for that. So, John, What is a reasonable person to do given that there are so many differences today in faith, in belief, and in worldview? Where do we go with that?
Well, we try not to go to despair. I think, as with other aspects of life, there's a shadow side to religious institutions also. Sometimes our religious institutions become echo chambers that lead us to isolate ourselves from others and to judge others by our own beliefs and standards. Of course, we've probably all seen this show up again and again in traditional Christianity. So the question then becomes, how do we as an individual shape our institutions and shape our experience that will bring light into these shadows? First of all is to acknowledge and articulate our differences, and to understand that our differences are a spiritual gift from God. To loosen our grip on our own perspective and trust that each of us has a picture of the truth, but none of us has the whole picture. To believe and act on the belief that everyone has something to teach us, particularly those who are least like ourselves. Trust the differences, trust the process, and trust the journey.
So how do we get out of this thing?
Well, an interesting question would be, if you had to choose another expression other than the one that you're currently pursuing, what would it be?
I could ask you the same question. So,
What, on the count of three?
on a count of three?
1, 2, 3.
Monastic Catholicism. So, we're really not all that far apart.
Not at all. And seriously, that's not a joke.
Thank you.
You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all of my ways. Even before a word was on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and night wraps itself around me, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it is you who formed me in my inner parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well.
There is only love, love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. There is only love.
Thank you, everyone. We prepare now to show our gratitude for what we continue to receive, and there are several ways to contribute to Unity of Bloomington. In terms of money, checks and cash are always welcome, or you can use the text to give button on the screen or the donate button on the website. I also encourage you to find a place within Unity where you can volunteer your talents. And if you need any help with that, please see me after the service. Prayer request forms are available in the pocket in front of your seat. Both the forms and the new visitor forms can be dropped in the basket. As the offering bags are passed, I invite you to bless the bags and their contents. And if you're new to us, we love feedback. We very much appreciate feedback. Feedback on your experience of today's service. And there is a blue visitor form in the pocket of the chair in front of you where you can give us your first impressions. Join me now in speaking our abundance affirmation. Together? I am an abundant being in an abundant universe. I am not dependent on people or situations for my good. God is the source of my supply. I always have something to give, and I consistently give it. I expect the best, I give my best, and I now attract the best in every experience.
The truth in me sees the light in you. The joy in me celebrates you.
join me in blessing these offerings together. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and I am grateful. Thank you so much. A few announcements today. Please join us for spiritual cinema. The Singing Revolution. That's today at noon, so feel free to linger a little bit and then linger a little longer and catch a movie. February 15th, there's a drumming circle at 7 o'clock. I've heard that these are very well attended, high energy, and just a lot of fun. So consider joining the drumming circle. You don't need to know how to drum. On February 24th, I am really looking forward to the Kirtan experience. It's from 7 to 10 p.m. There's a suggested love offering of $25, but no one will be turned away. Kirtan is a call and response form of chanting, so it's super easy to follow along, and it just fills the space and shakes up your gray matter in the best way possible. On February 25th, we have our annual meeting immediately after the Sunday service with a potluck. So be thinking about how you would like to contribute in your physical presence, in your spirit, and in your food. Now for our speakers on February 18th, we look forward to Luke Salmon speaking Fasting as Sustenance. Interesting. February 25th, John Acapio will be speaking on good grief. March 3rd, we welcome again Reverend Karen Williams, talking on the divine makes all things possible. And then on March 10th, we welcome Reverend Paul Hasselback virtually to speak on what he will be speaking on. I don't have that in front of me right now. So now please join me in speaking our prayer for protection. Together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And now please join together in a large circle today for our closing song, Let There Be Peace on Earth.